Hello? I'll try to go kind of quickly, and if you're watching this, you probably say, Lois, I know you can talk. Uh, I'll talk anybody out there. So I'll try to go quickly. But today is my dad's birthday. He passed away a few years ago. Uh, Born this day, 1946, Birmingham, Alabama. I'll tell you a few stories shortly or quickly. When I understood how long it took to produce a baby, and I found out my grandfather was not discharged from the Navy after World War II until 1946 in the winter, and my dad was born on May 1st, I thought I discovered a family secret, and I didn't dare tell anybody. Then a few years later, I was so pleased to find out that my grandfather had returned to Bremerton, Washington on the destroyer about 9 months before May the 1st. And my grandmother had taken the train trip from Alabama with my Uncle James all the way to Washington State and visit him for a little while. So the numbers worked out. I was worried. But my dad had a variety of jobs in his life, a varied professional life. He was a singer and white sewing machine store owner, sold and repaired sewing machines. That was a trade that he was taught and picked up from my grandfather, who was a bivocational minister. He worked at a radio station as a DJ. He called basketball, football, and baseball games. He sold ads. That was his big thing. He sold ads. He also had a local radio show that people really enjoyed called Trading Post. It was kind of the eBay for the airwaves back then, or the Craigslist. And he got that idea from my grandfather in Tennessee, my mom's dad. And they had the same type of show, but as I understand it, their show was just kind of dry. Just, hey, I have this to sell, or I'm looking for this. And my dad had fun with it. He had fun with the people who called, would sometimes pick on them, poke a little fun. And people would listen just to hear him interact with people. And he was always a funny fella, told really good stories. And that was a very popular show on WHSC in my hometown of Hartsville. He also had his pilot's license. He did some skydiving, and that was before I was born. I think when I was born, he decided to kind of, be a little less adventurous in that way. But I'll tell you what, I was a baby, and my dad, there was some car he wanted to show my mom. They were thinking about getting a car. And we were in apartments at the time, Farmington Apartments in Hartsville. If you're from Hartsville, you know Farmington, on the second floor. And I was a little baby, as I said, in the crib. And it's different. It was back then. He wanted my mom to check this car out. And so they took the car with my sister, who's older than me, and they went for a little test drive around the neighborhood and left their baby and the dog at home. Now, that's old school. That wouldn't happen today, hopefully. But my mom had cooked fried chicken, and when my dad came back, she took the cast iron with the grease on there. As I understood it, she put it up off the stove, but it was still hot. And they went for the test drive, did a loop, I don't know how long, and they were going to drive a little more, but they decided, no, let's stop by the house or the apartment. And that grease had started a fire in the kitchen, and the apartment was burning. And my dad went into the apartment through the flames. And when he got to the room where I was, he said the smoke was pouring in, and I was old enough to stand up in my crib, and I was checking out what was going on. Whereas the dog was in there, and he was kind of fighting off the flames with his barks. And so he grabbed me and wrapped me in my blanket and grabbed Max, our dog, and ran back out of the burning apartment and saved my life. Saved my life when I was a baby. Now, when I was older, and he was in law school in Columbia, we wanted to go canoeing in Columbia on that'd be the Saluda River, and it's dammed, so the amount of water coming out is depending on how much you know, SENG, which they don't exist anymore, how much water they're pushing through the turbines and releasing at the dam. And you're supposed to call and check and see ahead, because if they're pushing a lot of water out, it's going to be really rough, and you don't want to go canoeing. If there's not enough coming out, it may be the rocks, you know, the water too low, and you have to portage all the time. Anyway, we went. I was a little kid. I would have been, oh man, that'd have been 6th, 7th grade, I believe, 6th or 7th grade. And we were canoeing down the Saluda, and they were cranking it, and it was rough. I mean, in my mind's eye, it was like Deliverance, and we're out there, Lewis and Lewis in Deliverance, and luckily nobody's trying to shoot us or do anything else to us, but we're rolling. And when we got near, kind of near the zoo, where there's a place where all the USC students used to go out and hang out, we had to portage there, and that was tough. It was heavy, and my dad's taller than me, and I'm complaining. And he's like, just pick it up, we gotta go. It's too hard. And he's like, I don't care, we gotta get it going, we gotta go. And so we'd get past the rocks, get back in there, and guess what? It was rougher than before. We were below those rocks, which are the rocks are on Greystone, right off of Greystone near the zoo. And it was wicked rapids. And at one point, the canoe, we got swamped, but it's still floating. It's floating, although the water line is a little bit above the boat. And my dad said, stay in the boat. And I remember he was tough about that, but I thought, you don't have to say it twice. I'm staying in the boat. I'm not getting out of this boat. It's somehow floating, and I'll remain here. But he had to get out because with it full of water, he could not. I mean, we couldn't maneuver that thing, and we had a long way. We still had a ways to go. So my dad is out in the rapids with a semi-submerged canoe, with his son in the front, and he's trying to maneuver it. And at one point, his hand got caught between the canoe and rock, and it smashed it and broke bone, and bone was sticking out of his hand, and obviously he's bleeding, and it was nasty. But he got us through it. He got us through it to where our takeout point was, and the van was there. We had to lift that canoe up on the van, and as he was 6 feet tall and I was 5 feet something, he did most of the lifting. And he had bones sticking out of his hand and blood, and he did it. And he drove me home, and then from there, he drove himself to the emergency room. That's a tough man. That's a man. That's my dad. Lewis Cook. I'm Lewis Cook Jr. And I'm so proud to have that name. That's my dad, Lewis Cook.